Solid breakdown from Paul Hudrick here. The Sixers do have an open roster spot, but they don't have enough breathing room under the first apron to add another player until December. They're hard capped there. Keep that in mind next time you see rumors floating around from sketchy sources, because that's almost certainly what's fueling the chatter about Junior Holiday potentially getting bought out and landing back in Philadelphia. Honestly, I think the roster is locked in as is for the time being. This is the group we'll see take the floor on opening night. They could still add a body on a two-way deal, but it might make more sense to hold off, see who's standing out in the G League, and make a decision from there. I've also noticed some Sixers fans pushing for the team to bring in Nick Richards. I wouldn't hate that move, but at the same time, I think the front office already has just as much confidence in Adem Bona and Ariel Hook-Porty as they would in a player like Richards. That said, I don't think they're fully comfortable with the backup center situation, especially with Joel Embiid likely to be in and out of the lineup throughout the year. Still, I don't see anyone available right now who's dramatically better than what's already on the roster. If that stays a problem, it's probably something they end up addressing at the trade deadline instead. But going back to the whole point of this video, I think the real solution shows up in the playoffs over the course of the full season. You don't want to go small every single night because that kind of wear and tear adds up fast on a roster. But with LeBron James, Dean Wade, and Dominic Barlow all part of this roster now, every one of them is capable of sliding into the center spot if you build enough positional versatility around them. And here's what makes it work. LeBron can run the offense as a full-time point guard, and in these smaller lineups, Jaylen Brown would likely slide up to the two-guard spot. He's 6'6", plays like he's 6'7", and carries over 220 pounds. I think Nick Nurse could lean on these lineups whenever Maxey needs a breather, and of course, whenever Embiid is healthy and available. And here's what makes this particular small ball lineup so exciting. Yes, they'd be running center by committee, sacrificing size at that one position, but everywhere else on the floor, they'd actually have more size than usual. Starting with the backcourt. Your first guard is VJ Edgecombe. He's the only player in this lineup whose defensive versatility grades below average, though hopefully that changes as he continues adding muscle. You may have seen that recent photo of him. There's real potential for him to take a step forward on that end in year 2, but his perimeter defense numbers are already excellent. He's your point of attack defender, someone used to guarding the toughest matchups. He did it as a rookie, and it'll likely be his role again next season. For his size, he's also a strong rebounder, and honestly, that might be underselling him a bit. The other guard spot belongs to Jaylen Brown, who brings elite defensive versatility, grading in the 88th percentile, impressive for someone playing the 2 in this lineup. He also provides strong rim protection from that position and grades in the 70th percentile as an isolation defender, which matters a lot here since outside of VJ, this group is going to be switching almost everything. Brown also grades well as a defensive rebounder. Now to the 3 forward spots, and honestly, they're interchangeable. Every name left in this lineup could realistically slide between the 3 and the 5. This is positionless basketball at its core. LeBron James grades in the 89th percentile for defensive versatility and brings solid rim protection to go with it, along with a 77th percentile grade as a perimeter isolation defender. He was also an above-average rebounder last season. Then there's Dean Wade, whose calling card on defense is pure versatility. He graded in the 100th percentile, ranking second out of 582 qualified players. He brings strong rim protection, grades in the 91st percentile for perimeter isolation defense, and 95th percentile for navigating ball screens. That gives this lineup 2 legitimate options, Wade and Edgecombe, with Brown capable of it too when needed, to lock on to the opposing team's best scorer and fight through every screen thrown at them. He also rebounds well on the defensive end. Worth noting, these rebounding numbers reflect situations where these players had actual centers on the floor with them, so expect more responsibility and likely some regression in that category once they're playing without one. And finally, Dominic Barlow rounds out the group. He grades in the 82nd percentile for defensive positional versatility, adds much-needed rim protection to this lineup, and comes in at the 83rd percentile for perimeter isolation defense, having already built experience guarding high-level offensive players. His matchup difficulty rating sits at the 86th percentile, the same mark posted by Dean Wade and VJ Edgecombe last season. That's another encouraging piece to watch going forward. The hope for Barlow is that he keeps developing as a three-point shooter and defensive rebounder, because it's genuinely puzzling why he struggles as much as he does on the defensive glass. But overall, this lineup gives you a ton of offensive versatility, since outside of Barlow, every single player is willing to let it fly from 3, even if some of them are streaky. Really, the biggest hope for this group is that LeBron, Jaylen Brown, and VJ Edgecombe all take a step forward as three-point shooters compared to last season, with Barlow making even a modest jump of his own. And even though Barlow isn't a shooter, he still brings real value to this lineup as one of the best offensive rebounders in the league. So yes, there's a legitimate shooting question mark offensively, but overall they should hold up fine on that end. Defensively, they might get out-rebounded against backup centers in the mold of a Mitchell Robinson, but very few teams actually have someone like that coming off their bench. The hope is that this group can still function defensively because they'll be spending far more time guarding the perimeter, and surviving out there is going to come down almost entirely to versatility. As it turns out, bballindex.com has a lineup analyzer that lets you plug in a custom 5-man unit, and I ran the exact lineup we just broke down through it. It projects out to a net rating of plus 5.62, with a 117.73 offensive rating and a 112.11 defensive rating. Digging a bit deeper, 3-point shooting comes in at the 37th percentile, which could be a real concern. Help defense also graded poorly, but the hope is that switching will cover for that, since the lineup grades in the 99th percentile for positional versatility and 93rd percentile for isolation defense. On the glass, it grades in the 97th percentile for defensive rebounding and 75th percentile for offensive rebounding, so there's real potential to hold up there, though it'll clearly be a challenge without a true center on the floor. That brings me to a trade deadline idea. I think the Sixers could take this lineup even further if Barlow or VJ Edgecombe don't take the shooting leap we're hoping for. What about a look at Jalen Smith, who's playing out the final year of his deal in Chicago? He offers less switchability than what's already on the roster, but he brings legitimate rim protection at the center spot and grades well as a defensive rebounder. He also attempted 4.2 threes a game at 37% last season, which would take real shooting pressure off LeBron, VJ, and Jaylen Brown. And sure enough, going back to the lineup analyzer, swapping him in bumps the projected net rating from plus 5 all the way up to plus 8. The offense gets a real boost too, which matters given that Joel Embiid is likely to be in and out of the lineup, forcing Adam Bona or Ariel Hookporty into starting duty at times. And look, ideally you'd have a stronger backup center on the roster already, but that kind of player just isn't readily available right now, and it's unlikely one surfaces easily. I do think this matters more in the regular season than in the playoffs, though, since postseason rotations naturally tighten up. And you saw the Knicks handle this exact issue in a completely different way, and it worked out for them. They leaned on lineups with 3 guards off the bench at times, guys like Miles McBride and Jose Alvarado. So yes, you can absolutely point to backup center as a real weak spot on this roster, but there are paths to work around it, and the answer might not be signing someone off the open market or swinging a trade. It might simply be finding the right lineup combinations with the roster already in place, even if that means going smaller than usual. The good news is that the Sixers have real size at every other position on the floor, and ultimately that's exactly why the Knicks could get away with running all those small guard lineups, because they had a massive backup center in Mitchell Robinson anchoring things. The hope is that same formula works in reverse for the Sixers. Let me know your thoughts down below. Just wanted to put that idea out there. Drop a like, hit subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.